My name's River Barker. I'm an alcoholic. I gotta make sure I'm on silent. My 5-year-old just learned my phone number. So he calls me about 20 times a day. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. It's good to be in my right mind. That's something I learned from my sponsor. He says it a lot whenever he speaks. And, I think about, what does that mean to me? And I was thinking about it driving down here. This time years ago, it's probably 4 years ago, it's New Year's Eve, I got a phone call. I had to do a 12-step call on a young man, took him to a treatment, took him to a detox facility New Year's Eve. And then I went and checked on him a couple days later. Me and a couple other people went in to check on him, take a meeting to him. And I asked him, what are your plans? And he said, man, I just want to go out here and get drunk one more time and then I'm done. And it's I get that. I'm glad that I'm in the right frame of mind today and sane and don't have this delusion that I can go out and drink just one more time. So it's good to be here. It's good to be sober. I love this group. My home group is a lot like this group. There's lots of good leaders in this group. So it's always good to come out here and see them. And it's also funny, when you go out to groups and you're surprised people are still sober, like Brian. Just kind of. But the book says we just open the door just a little bit. That's enough for God to make a beginning. But my sobriety date is May 19th, 2013. I do have a home group. It's called the There's a Solution group. We just transitioned into a new facility. So we just moved to Cary, North Carolina. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2700 Jones Franklin Road. So if you guys are ever in the area, feel free to come out and check us out. We meet at 7 p.m. I do have a sponsor, and I also do sponsor other men. And one thing I was taught was early on, well, I kind of learned it throughout my sobriety. I'll get into it later, but I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was taught the importance of that. I don't just try to come in and sit down and leave right after the meeting. I try to participate and try to give back to a organization, as you would call it, or a group that literally saved my life. And not just in the beginning of me getting sober, but all throughout the years. I'll hit on it a little bit later, but the last few months have probably been the hardest of my entire sobriety. And the people in my home group have literally saved my life, by whether it's going out to eat or going out to events with them, going out to speaker meetings with them, doing all sorts of fun stuff outside of the rooms. That's what being a part of a home group is. It's not just a meeting. So I'm very fortunate that I have all those things and have such a strong home group, which is a lot like this group. And I'm very glad that I learned what alcoholism is through Alcoholics Anonymous, because I would have chased it probably to death. Because I was under the impression that if I just stayed sober long enough, that I could drink like a normal person. That was my philosophy of what an alcoholic was and what alcoholism was. And I didn't learn that through coming in and just sitting in a meeting. I learned that through getting a sponsor, getting a big book, meeting with that sponsor on a regular basis and reading and asking questions and him explaining it and me understanding that an alcoholic, I meet those requirements and those questions that it asked in the big book. I am an alcoholic and I'll never be able to drink like a normal person. But I never would have been able to come to that conclusion with my own mind without having a sponsor, without having a home group that really laid those things out for me. And it's tough because I come from a very small country town in Oklahoma. It's called Piedmont, Oklahoma. I know y'all have never heard of it. If you do, I'm surprised. It's one stoplight, so drinking is very normal out there. People go to work, come home, drink cold one, watch the football games, and that's it. So, throughout my drinking career, we didn't really look at it as drinking was too bad. Drinking wasn't too bad. Especially I did some drugs. I'm not going to talk about them, but so as long as I was drinking, people were okay. So I came from a culture of drinking is okay. But I grew up in a very religious home. My parents put us in a private Christian Lutheran school. I have one older brother, one little sister. So I am a middle child. I think that's why I'm an alcoholic. I would love to see a statistic on that, because I would believe that most alcoholics are middle childs. So my parents did a phenomenal job raising us kids. I never went without anything. My dad was a engineer for 40 plus years at a great company. Stayed with the same company the whole entire time. My mom still continues to work to this day. So they did a great job of instilling in us like really great morals and values of what we should grow up with. We grew up in that Christian school, private. We had to sing hymns, learn Bible verses, and recite them. Like, it was very religion-oriented facility and school that we were in. So at a very young age, I was really taught, like, this is what we believe in as a higher power. Like, this is what God is to us. And I felt like I lived a very sheltered life. I always felt less than. My parents always loved my older brother more than me. My little sister could get away with murder, and she never got in trouble. So I always felt like I wasn't a part of. I got the short end of the stick. I mean, I remember I used to have to go out and put on like all the football gear and just stand outside so my brother could practice his tackles, and he would just annihilate me. And I'm just like, yep, they're just trying to kill me. So I think at a young age, like, I acted out and did certain things just to try to get attention. Even if it was negative, I did certain things to try to get attention. I always went out with a bang. I remember one time I put a sparkler in my eye on the 4th of July because no one was paying attention to me. But it's like, that was how I thrived. Like, hey, I want attention. They're not giving it to me. So if I just do bad things, even as a little kid, like, at least I'll get some attention. And that just carried on with me. And we played sports. So we did play public sports, a Little League. And, in our private school, they didn't have sports. So we convinced my brother's 2 years older than me. I did a lot of things with him, a lot of my stories with him. But we convinced my parents to let us transfer to public schools. So we could be with our friends, so we could play sports. And, like, that was the first time I even learned what a cigarette was. That was the first time I learned about any sort of outside substance, including alcohol. Like, I lived a very sheltered life. And again, I don't think my parents did anything wrong. They just did the best that they could of giving us a very sound structure and protect us. And this should have just set the tone for me. But I mean, I remember the first night I drank alcohol, I got arrested. I was like, I think I was 12 or I was either 12 or 13 years old. I want to say I was 12, and I was out with my brother and some of his friends, and we got some alcohol, and I drank. And I remember, I hear people say, like, when I drank, all my problems went away. They just all melted. Like, I think I just didn't care. I think when I drank, like, hey, I don't care that my parents don't love me more than my brother. Like, it's okay. Screw them. F them. Like, I'm just gonna keep doing this then. But I mean, I remember that night, my parents were out of town with my sister at a softball tournament. So I'm drinking. We're in an empty parking lot. I get arrested. I lied to him about who I was because my brother and someone else had left. So once that cop came and arrested me, I told him I was my brother. And so the cops called my parents, and my parents called some, deacons, and this guy was a deacon in the church, but called their family, and they came and picked me up. I mean, it was so funny to watch. Like, they were expecting to pick up my brother because that's what they were told, and they picked me up, and then they're like, "Man, your parents don't even know what's going on." But it's like I didn't mind the consequences. Like, it made me feel a certain way that I hadn't felt before. It made me be okay with life. It made me be okay with all these outside things going on. My parents not loving me as much, me not getting the attention I want. Like, when I drank alcohol, it fixed a lot of those things, a lot of those problems. It fixed the way that I felt. So I couldn't wait to do it again. Now, again, I'm pretty sure I was 12, so it wasn't like I was drinking actively or an alcoholic from that point on. But I do remember, like, any chance that I could get of drinking, I would do it. I remember a funny story. I'm just going to say it. Screw it. I was like 14 years old, and I gave my brother's friend some money to go get me some alcohol. And he came back with some pills, ecstasy, and he was like, this is all I could get. And I mean, I remember taking them. I was like, screw it, like I'm just going to do it. Because I would do anything just to not feel, just to feel something other than how I felt. And I remember I was tripping balls, and I walk in my parents' house, and they're you know, and you don't see it until later, but like all the arguments I caused between my mom and dad, all the pain I caused them, you know, the strain I put on their marriage. But I remember I came in, I had some other stuff in my pocket, and they could tell, and then they were like, it's in his jeans. And I was like, how do they know it's in my jeans? But they were talking like genetics, like that. But I mean, I went upstairs in my room tripping balls at 14. Like, how do they know? Like, how could they see that? Like, there's no possible way. But shortly thereafter, I got sent to my first treatment center at age 14. It was out of state. It was religion based, and it was a great program. I think that they just had enough of me and the way I was acting, my behavior, and me being very rebellious to them and their rules and their guidelines for me as their child. So they sent me there, and I mean it was a good program, but it just, again, I had no desire to stop anything. I just kind of wanted, again, them to get off my back, and even then at that age, it's like, hey, like, maybe if I just chill out a little bit, maybe I can just do it normally when I get out of here, like normal people. And I remember I came home on Christmas break. I did things with my brother. When I came back, you know, they did a breath test and drug test, and I failed. So then I was put on this, like, basically like detention, sitting in my room. I couldn't do any extracurricular activities. And I remember after like a month, I was just like, I'm done. And I called my family, made them come and get me. And I was in Arkansas. I was like, hey, like, y'all can either come and get me or I'm walking. And I was just that selfish, that self-centered. Everything's about me. I don't care what you got going on. I mean, my dad had to stop work, drive hours away to come pick me up. I remember it was the next morning. He left really early. He came and picked me up. And I told him, I was like, hey, like, I'm done. Like, I got it. I get the picture. You don't have to keep doing this to me. I get it. You made your point. So he comes, picks me up, takes me home, drops me off. He goes back to work just to finish out the afternoon, and I immediately go back to what I was doing. I mean, I think that when he came home, I was already gone. And that was just it. Like, I had no desire to stop. Like, even if I really wanted to, there was just something in me that just really couldn't stop. And then at the age of 17, I was 14, actually about 16 years old. I got pulled over again with my brother in a small country county. I took the heat for everything, so I got put on probation in that county. And then I remember I had court when I was 17, and it was at 9 a.m., and I told my mom I would meet her there. So I'm racing to get there. I'm speeding, and I ended up getting walked into the courthouse because I got pulled over right in front of the courthouse for speeding. And I get walked into the courthouse with my mom waiting there for me in handcuffs because I was under the influence. And it's just, again, like, I just didn't care. I thought that I was just young. I could do whatever I wanted, and this makes me not feel the way that I feel without it, so I'm just going to keep doing it. So the judge was not happy about that. I thought that they were going to send me out this door to juvie, and they sent me out that door, but instead of going right, I went left. And I went to a state-funded treatment center that they had on site there for juveniles, and that was a good program. It was 12-step based. They would bring meetings in there, but again, I didn't know what an alcoholic was. I didn't know what alcoholism was. So when I'm sitting in this AA meeting that I'm required to go to, it's my first experience ever, and my thought is, these people just come here until they've stayed sober for 6 months or however long, and then they can go out into the world and drink like normal people. And I remember, again, I was just selfish, self-centered. I was so full of myself. That's all I cared about was myself. I didn't care who I hurt or the pain I caused. I remember the day I got out, I was so excited because the next day my dad was going to have a surgery, and I got to be the savior. I got to be the good kid, fresh out of treatment. I got to take him home. But in reality, I was just happy to do it because I knew that they were going to give him some pain meds, and if you take pain meds and alcohol together, and you're on a good ride. And it's just that, and that's what I did. And that's just how selfish I was. And my parents were not happy about that either. So I was 17 years old. At 18, I got my first DUI, driving under the influence. Went to big boy jail now. And I remember sitting in there and I'm like, okay, like I'm done. I'm done drinking. That's it. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep hurting my family. Like my mom was extremely upset when I called her from the jail to come pick me up. Like I was done. And I knew it. Yet when I left there, 18 days later, I got a second DUI for running a lady off the road in her van with her children. And it wasn't that when I went to jail for the first DUI, I didn't mean it. It's just I didn't have a solution to stop drinking. And again, at the age of 18, that second DUI, I mean, I remember I went in there, I was so hammered. I called my mom and she was like, "What are you in there for?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I just laughed. Like I thought it was funny. I thought it was cool. But yeah, I ran a lady off in her van with her 3 children. And I have children now, so I can see how serious that is. But I didn't think anything of it. At first I thought, well, everyone gets 1 DUI, and then I was like, well, some people get 2, so it's okay. I can still do something with my life. Then this is where it got kind of bad. Is I remember I was still 18 years old. I had this long hallway in my parents' house, and I was leaving one night, and my mom just looked. She was at one end of the hallway, I was at the other, and it was like 9 o'clock at night. And she just looked at me with tears running down her face, and she was just begging me not to go out because she knew I was going to go out. And I was like, well, I'm leaving. And it wasn't that I'm a crappy son. It wasn't that I like to hurt my parents. It's just I could not stop. And I went out that night, got drunk, robbed a store, ended up getting arrested. And at the age of 19, I went to Department of Corrections for the first time in Oklahoma. And I was thinking about it earlier today too, like how crazy that was like when my mom picked me up from my friend's house to go to court, to go to prison. Like I knew, hey, this is your court date, this is when you're signing, you're going to prison. My mom picked me up from my friend's house. One of my friends was passed out in the front yard. There was some random person I've never seen before on the couch. I was passed out drunk, and another buddy of mine was passed out drunk, and I just thought that was normal. Like, I was like, yeah, I went out with one more bang, and that was what I wanted. Hey, I'm just going to have one more night. Let me go to prison, do my time, and I'll be done. One more night of fun, and I'll be good. Went to prison, was there for about 7 months, got released, and again, 7 months sober. 7 months, exactly what I thought. Hey, if you just stay sober long enough, you can drink like a normal person. Well, I could not. As soon as I got out, I started drinking again, and it was just like I never stopped. But it's like once I take a drink, I never know when I can stop. And from the age of 18 to 19, I went to jail a lot. And it's bad whenever you go to jail and you finally take a deep breath. It's bad whenever you go to court order treatment center and you finally can take a deep breath. Because it's over. I can't do anything. I don't have to keep fighting this fight. Like I cannot get it in here. So as soon as I get out of prison, I'm going right back to doing the same stuff. And again, I had made all these wholehearted conclusions that I'm done drinking. I'm done with the lifestyle I used to live. It's time to buckle down. But then, once I got out, I started drinking. Then I started making every excuse of why I'm too young to quit drinking. I'm too young to quit doing all this stuff. I'm not even 21 yet. I definitely can't be an alcoholic. And so I got a job some family friends owned a oil field company in Oklahoma, so I got a job there. That's probably not that's not a good place, probably for an alcoholic or someone that struggles with other things. But yeah, I mean, I joined this company in the oil field in Oklahoma, and I mean, it was like every day was a party. I mean, every day we would work, we would do hard work, and then we would drink afterwards. And that was what I was looking for. And it wasn't that it's like you have a problem, but you don't know how to fix it, so you just don't try to fix it. And it got so bad that I would come home some night, and I mean, some of you may know or just know from movies or whatever, but like when you work in the oil field, you come home filthy. And I would come home some nights and just sit in my car till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night and just sit in my parents' driveway in my car drinking. Didn't care about myself, didn't care about being clean, didn't care about my health. Like, nope, I'm just going to keep drinking and try to drink all this pain away and try to put all these thoughts down. And it never worked. It was never enough. I remember I bought this car, that same car. I bought it because it was so cool. It was this little 2-door Ford Focus. And I was hot, man. But I could fit a 24-pack behind my driver's seat, and it was perfect because I could just reach behind me, grab one, drink it, and then throw it over there. But that was what I was sitting in. But you know what I mean? That just took me to a dark spot. Like, I would try different things. At this point in time, God is anywhere near my life. Anytime I was praying to God, it was if I was in jail, trying to get him to get me out of some sort of situation. But it was never. I quit having a relationship with God. And really, my thought on it was, let me just finish out my partying phase, and once I'm done, then I'll come back to Him. And you know, when I worked in the oil field and I was doing all that drinking, like I always thought, like, if I just met the right girl, everything would get better. If I just got a better job where they didn't do this, it's their fault that I'm drinking this way. It's not mine. You know, they're peer pressuring me. If I just had a better job, I wouldn't drink this way. If I got married or if my parents didn't treat me so bad, I wouldn't drink this way. If I had children, I wouldn't drink this way. But you know, I met great women in my life. I had other job opportunities in my life, but yet I continued to drink the same way that I did. So no matter my circumstance, I always drank. But unfortunately, my perception is reality, and it's still even true to me to this day. Like, if I believe something, if I perceive it as something, no matter what, I believe that that's true. If I think that this job is a problem, whether it is or not, I'm going to believe that that's true. So at the age of 22, 23, I was 22. Believe it or not, I got some more charges. I had to go to prison again for the second time in the state of Oklahoma, and this time it was a lot more. This time it was a lot more serious. So I was looking at 9 years. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to do what I've always heard. I'll go to a treatment center to try to make everything better. So I went to another treatment center that was a 12-month program, and I stayed there for 3 months, and then I left. And the cool thing was like, I stayed sober after that. It shocked me. But I stayed sober after that, and then I went in front of the judge, and my 9-year sentence got turned into a 5 split in half, so 2.5 years in, 2.5 years out. And it was like, hey, I did it. Like, I've been sober now for almost a whole year. No AA, no nothing. Like, I'm good. Prison is a process. You go to county jail for like 30 days, and then you go to assessment for 30 days, and you actually hit your prison yard. The minute I hit my prison yard, it was offered to me, and I took it. There was no defense. Even after having right around probably 12, 14 months sober, the minute I stepped foot into that prison, put my stuff in my locker, they came right over to me, asked me, and there was no defense against it. So, yep, absolutely. And there wasn't a day that went by that I was inside prison that I did not drink alcohol. Not one. And it wasn't that I didn't want to, it's just like I had no defense. And then, of course, once I drink, I start making every excuse as to why I'm drinking. It's okay. Like, you'd be drinking too if you're in prison. Jeez. Like, if it's offered to you. And it was the coolest prison too, man. You could lay in bed all day. Like, sometimes I'm like, let me just go back for like a month or something. These 3 kids are killing me. But so my whole entire time I was incarcerated for the second time, I was under the influence. And they even said, hey, we're going to send you to this work release program. When you get there, you're going to have to take a breath analysis and a urine test. And the minute I got there, I failed the breathalyzer. Yep. But I couldn't stop. It wasn't that I wanted to. I mean, I knew as soon as I do that, I'm going to get thrown in some room in the hole for however long. It's going to look bad on my record when I'm trying to get out in front of a judge. But I just couldn't stop. No matter how bad I wanted to, every day when I got closer to getting to that work treatment facility, I'm going to stop tomorrow. I'm going to stop tomorrow. I'll cut it out tomorrow. I was drinking right before they transported me out. But I finally got out of prison. And again, I'm from a small country town, so both times I got out of prison, it's like, hey, you're on parole for this long, but if you pay us this amount of money, we'll get you out of it. Like, you're done with your time. So both times my family paid it because they just knew I would mess it up somehow. And as soon as I got out, I was doing the same stuff. Went right back to drinking alcohol, went right back to that same family friend that owned the oil field company, went right back to work there, drinking every day, or every night. And that was another thought of mine, was like, well, I just drink in the evenings. I'm not an alcoholic. One, I didn't really know what an alcoholic was, but I'm when I was working out after prison the second time, like, I'm just drinking at night. Like, who doesn't go to work and come home and drink a cold one? I'm doing hard work. I deserve a cold one. But it got to the point where I was having to wake up and drink alcohol. I was having to make sure that I packed 2 40s in my lunch just so I could make it through the day. In the oil field, there's lots of these little like oil things that you can hide in. And I promise you, at least twice a week, I would crawl in one for a couple hours and just sit in there with a bottle and just drink, just to try to make it through the day, or try to get the shakes away from the detox. And I mean, it got bad. But again, I thought if I just go somewhere and get clean for a certain amount of time, I can live a normal life. And again, I can't see all the other times where I've been sober for 12 months, 14 months, and then when I drink, I can't stop. I can't see any of that. I still just believe that if I stay sober long enough, I can drink alcohol like a normal person. So finally, this is where life started to get better for me. I finally went to a treatment center on my own. I went to it in Florida. What I learned is when I drink, I pass out anywhere. I'm talking, I could sleep on the floor. When I'm hammered, I'm done. But I learned you can snort a little bit of cocaine, you're done. Like, you're right back in it. So I started to do that so I could drink longer. But then I went to treatment, because it's like, literally, I went to treatment. I remember calling my mom from the treatment center because she didn't know where I was at. I literally did it all on my own. But I went to treatment center so I could stop doing cocaine, so I could just go back to drinking alcohol the way I was. Yep. And that was what I told my mom, and she was like, "Yeah, you sound nuts, but okay." Like, and again, hey, as long as you're not doing that stuff, it's okay. Like, if you just want to drink, it's okay. That's just the country that I come from, the small town. Like, hey, as long as you're not doing that, it's okay if you drink. So I went to this treatment center. This one, again, was a 12-step based program. They had guys come in that brought meetings. It was a great facility, great guys, great group that came in every week and brought a meeting. But again, I didn't know what Alcoholics Anonymous was. I didn't fully understand what it was. I just thought it was some guys that had nothing better to do with their lives that came in and shared the message and acted like they were heroes and wanted to help everybody in the whole world, just to make themselves feel better. So I left that treatment center, and I told myself, I'm going to go X amount of time until I drink again. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. I want to say it was about 5 to 6 months I stayed sober when I left there. But I remember it was just like yesterday I woke up and it was like, today I can drink like a normal person. That was what I thought when I woke up. So I immediately went to the store, got alcohol, and this was 9 a.m., got some alcohol, and drank like I never stopped. The job I had at the time, ended up sneaking 40s to work there to drink during the morning, during lunch, drinking afterwards, and you just stopped showing up to work. But it was literally like I never stopped. And my story contains lots of other things, like, my parents kicked me out, I was homeless, I slept on the streets, I slept behind hotels, like, no circumstance got me sober. Those were terrible circumstances, and it wasn't enough for me to stop doing what I was doing. But I remember the day I got sober was the night before I had just gotten paid. I had a cake party. I bought 4 24 packs to put in my closet just in case the cake ran out. And when I woke up the next morning, I still had all 4 24 packs. I still had money in my pocket. Yet I have tears rolling down my face, and I'm just begging God to help me. I'm literally on the phone with this treatment center, and I'm just saying a prayer, God, please help me. And it was like an out-of-body experience. It was like when I look at it, it's like it wasn't me calling. But I called that same treatment center that I just went to because alcohol was not the problem the first time. Went back to that same treatment center strictly for alcohol. Now, when I say this, I mean it. Like, I had no intention of still being sober today. None. Because I didn't know what alcoholism was. I didn't know what being an alcoholic was. I thought I would go. 6 months isn't long enough, I just know. So maybe it's 9 months, maybe it's 12 months. But all I wanted to do whenever I got sober was be able to go to work, come home, and drink a cold one and be good. That's all I wanted. That was still my dreams and my hopes when I joined Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no intention of still being sober. But I went to this treatment center, and again, I'm from Oklahoma. This treatment center is in Florida. I met this girl there that lived in Raleigh area. So I thought, well, we just, you meet a girl in rehab, it's just meant to be. So she got out about a week before me. I called my parents, and I remember the conversation. I was like, Dad, Oklahoma's my problem. Chase, my brother's my problem. I heard Raleigh's got really good recovery. That's where I need to be. And so they got me into an Oxford house there, and she got out about a week before me, and we had the whole thing planned out. She was going to pick me up from the airport, take me to my Oxford house, and I'd get a job once I get on my feet. We'd move on and live happily ever after. Well, I got to the airport, landed, and I called her. I've never seen her since. I think she's sober now. She's a good girl. She dodged a bullet, I can tell you that. But I went to this treatment center, or I went to this Oxford house, and I'm going to speed it up here. But I went to this Oxford house. Most of the guys in that Oxford house were in a different 12-step program. They did a phenomenal job with me. They were very nice. They made sure to take me with them to their meetings. Because I had to hit all my meetings being in Oxford house. But when I was in there, I just couldn't relate. I just couldn't. Like, I did cocaine, went to treatment, never did it again. Went to treatment when I was 14 for things, left there, never did it again. But like alcohol, I could never stop. So I couldn't relate to that 12-step program. So one night, I remember just sitting there thinking, like, maybe I ought to just go to an AA meeting. Then I was like, well, that'd mean I'd have to ride the bus. I'm a little too good for that. But I did. I looked up this route, and I got on the bus and went to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and went there, and I made sure everyone in there knew I was the most important person there. I'm the newcomer. And these two guys came to me afterwards, and they're like, hey, you're going to go out to eat with us. And I said, man, money's real tight. My parents are paying all my bills. I don't have a job. Like, maybe another time. And they're like, man, we got you covered. Really, I was just trying to dodge them. I didn't want to go out to eat with two strange young men. But they took me out to eat, and they spoke to me in a way very nonchalantly. They just spoke, and I could just relate. They knew what it was like to look at their mom crying and still go out and drink. Not because they're bad people, because they couldn't stop. They know what it's like to run people off the road with family people in the van and still not be able to stop. They know what it's like to have all these bad circumstances against you, but you're still drinking because you don't know how to stop and don't have a solution. So they spoke to me in a way that I could relate, and they had some authority, and I was really able to make that identification with them. So one of them agreed to be my sponsor, and I joined a group, and I remember he was like, hey, you need to get a service position. So I sat at that meeting, and they did their voting for all the service positions, and I didn't nominate myself for any of them. And so when all of it was done, I was like, well, maybe next year. I didn't get one. And he was like, no, you're going to stand out there and hold the door open for the next year. And looking back on it, like that was probably one of the best things he could have done for me. And one thing I've been shown throughout Alcoholics Anonymous and the phenomenal leaders that are in Alcoholics Anonymous is they don't just tell you to do something. Like, they'll do it with you. They'll show you how to do it. They're not just going to leave you hanging. Like, they're not going to tell you to do anything that they haven't done, that they haven't tried, that's worked for them. So he would sit there with me. He sat there with me for probably 2 months, holding the door open for people until I got comfortable. But what I learned through that process was I got to meet people. I started to learn people that came into that meeting. I started to learn the home group members. I started to build relationships with people. And that's where I really started to learn about a group and like the importance of a home group and building relationships. The funny part is after I worked the 12 steps with that sponsor, he was like, okay, now we're going to go over the traditions. And I was like, heck no. It's like, I'm done. I'm not doing no tradition. Like, I've done 12 steps. I'm done. I just want to go to these young people's meetings and hit on girls. Like, I just want to live my life for a little bit. And we can come back to this. Like, I need a break. Like, I've done all this. So at that time, I ended up doing what everyone does. I just slowly drifted away from Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd met a girl at the time, and we ended up getting a house together, and we got married. But at the end, it was probably like 9 months that I didn't do Alcoholics Anonymous, and in the end, what that looked like was her on her hands and knees crying, begging me to go back to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had quit drinking, but I was still that bad of a person. Like, quitting drinking is not a solution to me. Like, there's spiritual principles and a way of life in this book that are a solution that will solve all my problems, not just alcohol. Because I quit drinking alcohol and I quit doing AA, and all my problems are still there. And the reality is throughout all this, I had never really given God a fair shot in my life. I never really opened the door and invited God in to help me. So at that time, it was actually funny. I went to this Starbucks right by our house, and I ran into my sponsor, and he was like, how you doing? I was like, man, I'm great. He's like, man, I ain't seen you in like 9 months. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm good, man. And he's like, how are you really? And I'm like, man, I'm terrible. And this was like a Saturday, and our old home group met on Sundays, and he's like, man, just make a commitment, man. I was like, okay, I'll make a commitment. Like, I'll just go back to the home group. He's like, yeah, just meet me there tomorrow. And I was like, well, it's not that bad. Like, maybe tomorrow's a little too early. But I did. I went back there, and the group that I'm a part of now, I've been there for a long time. And I used to go there in my first year of sobriety. And there was this guy that would always have these slick one-liners, like, stay on the path, or don't get too busy. And I would always leave it like, that guy's a joke. But I would leave that meeting like, man, they are taking this way too serious. Like, they're talking about applying this in your work, applying it in your marriage, applying it everywhere that you go. And it's like, that's too much. Like, I'm just trying to live a good life and not drink. But in the end, that's what I needed, because I quit drinking. History showed me, like my experience showed me, that I quit drinking, and yet I was terrible in my workplace. That 9 months I took off on my workplace, I had a company card. I furnished my whole entire house with a company credit card. I argued and fought with my wife. It was just, I was a terrible person. In reality, that's what I needed, was to surround myself with people that actually are members of Alcoholics Anonymous and take it serious and read that book and apply it to their lives. So I remember I had my head held down low, and I came walking into There's a Solution, and he's like, oh, there he is. But so I joined my home group at that time. But it was like, that's what I needed. Groups like this group is very similar. Like they practice the 3 legacies, and I think that we do that because we know the importance of it. I had to learn about the traditions. I had to learn about the 12 steps. I had to learn about God and how to connect to that God and let Him help me. Because that's reality is that's what that book is about, is helping me tear down a lot of things to connect me to a power that can solve all my problems. So I joined There's a Solution. I got right back into work. Started working the 12 steps. Then I decided to actually look at the traditions for once, and I actually love the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous probably more than I do the 12 steps. They definitely are a foundation of what I try to apply in my life, and what I try to make sure is the foundation that I build everything on. And, again, like my life the last 4 months has been brutal. Like, I've gotten hit from every angle. I'm not going to go into detail, but like things that people are like, some of us were talking about it after, like when your sponsor says like, man, let me sleep on it, or I ain't got nothing for you, like it's bad. But they've always guided me to God. And, the best thing is, I've said I never gave God a fair shot in life in all this to do work in my life. I blamed Him for stuff growing up, but the reality is like I just blamed Him for my actions and things that I chose to do. But I've connected to a God now, and it's very simple, and I'm at peace. I have all this stuff going on, and I have a lot going on, and like my mom loves chaos, and she's like, I don't know how you're doing it. And it's like, Mom, like it's okay. Like they're going to have to live with what they do. I'm okay. God's going to handle them. And it's like, I'm at peace. I don't have to waste a lot of time, a lot of energy on any negative thing, whether it's at work or at home, in the AA group. I can just know that God's got it. And I'm at peace today with it. And it's really been very, very just relaxing. The book talks about, we just find a God, and like I just go where God leads me. It's very simple. I wake up, I pray, and I just go on about my day. And wherever God puts me, that's where I end up. And the book talks about, I'll end with this, but like, no one I know with long-term sobriety that lives a happy, successful life, like Steve, like Jerry, like other leaders in Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a home group, they sponsor men, and they are sponsored, and they're of service. Those 3 things. It's that simple. No, that's all I have to do, is try to follow that the best that I can. And what I've learned through these leaders in Alcoholics Anonymous is that literally just a simple belief and reliance upon a higher power is all that I need. That's all that I need, and follow some other simple steps. And that's what I found today. I just connect to God and let Him do the work. So thank you guys again.